Welcome to another video where we are going to solve a quadratic equation by factoring. The quadratic equation has a standard form ax squared plus bx plus c. And in this case, the leading coefficient a is not equal to 1. So notice that in these cases, the leading coefficient here in the first place is 5. The leading coefficient in the second equation is 3. In the last one and the third one, we need to put it in standard form. We will do that as we go along. In the fourth problem, the leading coefficient is 6. So we are still going to use factoring to solve these equations. However, there are two different things that we do differently as when we have a is equal to 1. That is, the solution or the factors are going to be reversed in sign, and we need to divide by the leading coefficient, the respective leading coefficient. So let's get started with the first example. The first example, 5x squared minus 3x minus 2 is equal to 0. The objective is to find the solution or find the roots or zeros for this equation. So the first step is to multiply the leading coefficient by the last term. It will give you minus 5 times minus 2, it will give you minus 10. The second step is to find the factors of minus 10 in such a way that when we add those two factors, it will give you minus 3, the middle number there. So let's get started with two factors that give you minus 10. How about 1 times minus 10? Well, that gives you minus 10. But what else are we looking for? We are looking for the fact that when we add 1 and minus 10, it should give you minus 3. It doesn't do that in this case, does it? 1 minus 10 is equal to minus 9. Therefore, these two factors are not going to be considered. Let's continue. How about 2 times minus 5? Well, 2 times minus 5 gives you minus 10, doesn't it? Good candidate. And when we add them, 2 minus 5 gives you minus 3. Bingo. Those are the two factors that we're going to use in our solution. So our solution is then x is equal to, you write 2, but then you need to write the opposite sign. If it is positive here, that's going to be minus here. And you need to divide by the leading coefficient. So one solution is minus 2 over 5. The other solution is using this factor. But remember, we are going to be using the opposite sign, so that would be 5. Negative 5, well, we use 5. And we divide by the leading coefficient, which is 5 also. That in turn will give you 1. So what is the solution? The solution set is going to be minus 2 over 5 and 1. Let's move on to the second problem. The next problem is (3x squared plus 7x minus 2). Well, what would be the first step? The first step is to multiply the leading coefficient, which is 3 times minus 2. That would give you minus 6, wouldn't it? Minus 6. Then we look at the factors, and when we add those two factors of minus 6, we'll give you, in this case, it has to give you 7. So, well, let's see. What are those two factors that when you add them, I believe that the problem statement is a plus 2 here instead of minus 2. So it's actually 3 times 2 is equal to 6. All right, so what are the factors of 6? Well, you could have 1 times 6. 1 times 6 will give you 6, wouldn't it? And how about when we add them? 1 plus 6 is equal to 7. So that means we're going to be using those factors. Well, the solution would be then 1. But what did we say about the sign? It has to be opposite. If this one is positive, this one has to be negative. What else? We divide by the leading coefficient. The next solution is going to be equal to 6. What do we say about the sign? We divide by what? We change it from positive to negative. And we divide by also the leading coefficient. And there it is. What is the solution? The solution, well, this turns out to be negative 2. So what's the solution to this problem? It's going to be equal to minus 1/3, comma, minus 2. And there it is. Let's go to the third problem. Okay, what do we have here? Well, we have that the problem is not in standard form, so we simply need to turn it into a standard form. How do we do that? Well, we need to multiply both sides by x squared. So let's rewrite the problem statement. That would be minus 2 over x squared plus 1 over x plus 6 is equal to 0. Notice that there is a condition that x cannot be 0, because if it is 0, that means it goes undefined. So multiply both sides of the equation by x squared. What do we have? Well, this x squared and this x squared cancel. We end up with minus 2 plus, there is an x squared divided by x. That would be x. And the last one's x squared times 6 would be plus 6x squared. And in the right side, 0 times x squared is 0. Rearranging with the leading coefficient means 6x squared plus x minus 2 is equal to 0. Now we have it in standard form, don't we? Well, let's see. Multiply then 6 times minus 2. That would give you minus 12, wouldn't it? What are the factors of minus 12 that when we add them gives you 1? Well, how about, say, 4 times minus 3? Would that give you minus 12? Yes. And when we add them, 4 minus 3 gives you 1. So we're going to be using those factors. Let's continue on the next page. So what did we have? We had that the factors that we are going to be using are 4 and 3 and minus 3. So x is going to be equal to 4. Since it is positive, it's going to be negative. And we need to divide by the leading coefficient, which was 3, right? So we need to divide. Actually, it was 6. 6. So we need to divide 4 by 6, which in turn will give us minus 2/3. That's one solution. The other solution is minus 3 or negative 3, but opposite sign, right? So that would be 3, and divided by the leading coefficient was 6, which is equal to 1/2. So what is the set of solution set? It's going to be equal to minus 2/3 and 1/2. Okay, let's go to the last problem. The last problem is going to be 6x squared plus 23x plus 7. What do we have here? We have then that 6 times 7, that is going to be equal to 42. Look at the factors of 42 in such a way that when I add them, gives me 23. How about 1 times 42? Well, it gives me 42, right? 1 times 42, 42. But when I add this 1 and 42, I get 43. I don't get 23, do I? Well, let's continue. How about, so these are not good. How about 2 times 21? Well, 2 times 21 is 42, isn't it? And when I add them, it gives me 23. So we are going to be using those factors in our solution. So x is equal to 2. It's positive, so it turns out to be negative. And we divide by the leading coefficient, which is 6, which is going to be equal to minus 1/3. The next solution is going to be equal to x equal to 21. And we divide it by, it's positive, so it's going to be negative. And we divide by the leading coefficient, which is 6, which, reducing the fraction, that would be minus. What's common to 21 and 6? How about 3? Well, 21 divided by 3, that would be 7. And 6 divided by 3 would be 2. So what's the solution set to this problem? Well, it's going to be equal to minus 7/2 and minus 1/3. Okay. And that's the solution to this last problem. Thank you for watching.